Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk to you all a bit about just how stacked this year's Western Conference is going to be. And I know in the past it was a theme where, oh, the West is so stacked, it's way better than the East, but I really do think the past season, the Eastern Conference was better over the 2022 NBA season, but next year it might be very different, because for many different reasons, whether teams are improving, getting healthier, made moves, the West is going to be a bloodbath. It's going to remind me a lot, I think, of the 2013-14 Western Conference where 7 teams won over 50 games and the 9-seeded Suns won 48 games and they missed the playoffs. That win total would have had them as the 6th seed this past season, tied with the Denver Nuggets. The West was pretty good, like I said, this past year. We saw the 1 and 2 seeds fall in the conference semifinals. We saw the 8 seed take the 1 seed to a 6-game series. All over, it was a really good Western Conference. And now, I really think only 2 teams got a lot worse in the Utah Jazz and the San Antonio Spurs, and everyone else is getting actively better. There's legit like 5 or 6 teams I could see at least making a conference finals run in the West. It's going to be ridiculous. So we're going to go ahead and go through pretty much all the teams in the West and talk about what is going to make the West so scary, what I see in each team, and why the Western Conference is going to be absolutely stacked this upcoming season. We're going to go ahead and start off with, of course, the NBA champion Golden State Warriors. I don't really need to tell you why they're so good. They've got Curry, they've got Clay, they've got Draymond. That's really all you need to know. They've been to 6 finals in the last 8 years. They now have another year for Klay Thompson to get healthy as well, which he really wasn't fully himself this past season. Now you give him a full off season to kind of work, rehab, get better. He now has played about half a year of NBA action, so he's getting more into rhythm. And if Klay looks anything like the Klay of the past in this upcoming season, things are going to get a lot scarier for teams outside of the Golden State Warriors. They've also got a ton of young talent in Jordan Poole, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and they just drafted Patrick Baldwin Jr., who has shown a lot of potential earlier on pre-college and is, I think, in the perfect situation to show out for the Warriors. They've got James Wiseman, who's going to be coming back, and as he progresses back into NBA shape, I think he could be huge for them. Now, they did lose Gary Payton II and Otto Porter Jr. to free agency, but they brought in great role players like Dante DiVincenzo, and today, JaMychal Green, after he got bought out from the Oklahoma City Thunder. Shout out to a Thunder legend. They also retained Kevon Looney, who is phenomenal for them. They've got Steve Kerr. This is the same team that's been to 6 finals in the last 8 years. The young players are going to get better. They've got one of the best trios of all time. It's just all around a really great roster. They're the NBA champions. I don't need to tell you why they could win the West. Then you've got the Suns, who, despite their embarrassing loss in the playoffs, are a phenomenal team. They broke the franchise record for wins in a season. CP3 and Booker are probably the best backcourt in the league. They brought back DeAndre Ayton, who is a really solid center for that team. Mikal Bridges is a young defensive player of the year caliber player on the wing. He's only going to get better. Monty Williams is a top 3 coach in the league right now, in my opinion. They've got a lot of great depth as well. Guys like Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson. Bismack Biyombo was really good as a backup center this past season. They're just all around a great team. Regardless of the way that things ended, they're going to be right back in contention. Maybe they won't get back to the finals like they did the first year with this duo of Chris Paul and Devin Booker, but I do think they're in a great position to make a run out there in the West. And also, there's always the potential of a Kevin Durant trade looming for both the Warriors and the Phoenix Suns, as well as a few other teams down this list that maybe could happen later on in the season to even further make this conference ridiculous. Then we've got the Memphis Grizzlies, who just had a breakout season going 56-26. Breakout years as well from Ja Morant, who became an all-NBA player, and I expect him to only get better. Desmond Bane, who is a most improved player candidate prior to losing it to his teammate in Ja Morant, and he showcased exceptional shooting ability that makes him a perfect fit next to Ja Morant. You've got Jaren Jackson Jr., who has potential to be a defensive player of the year if he clears up some of his fouling issues, and he was all defensive this past year. So with that, you have one of the best young big threes in the league that are all going to continue to take steps, in my opinion. Taylor Jenkins as well was phenomenal this past season. was in Coach of the Year running, very deservedly. They made their big leap onto the scene, and their team's really young too. It's not like they've got some older players that are going to regress, like they lost like D'Anthony Melton, who they traded away. They lost Kyle Anderson, but similar to the Golden State Warriors, even though they lost some pieces, they have so many young players that can step up and kind of fill those roles. Zaire Williams showed a ton of potential last season. Dylan Brooks, when he can chill out a little bit with the shot selection, is good as well. Tyus Jones, Xavier Tillman, Brandon Clark. They just drafted Jake LaRavia, who I think fits them really well. Kenneth Lofton Jr., David Roddy, who show promise. And recently, the Grizzlies just haven't missed drafting in the last few seasons, so I fully buy into all those guys. They look good in Summer League, and I think the Grizzlies are just going to continue to get better, and they have the potential to be a powerhouse in the West for a really long time with their combination of young talent and talent that is ready to kind of play now as well, as we saw this past season. Then we have the Denver Nuggets, who a lot of people forget, last time we saw this Nuggets team fully healthy, they went to the Western Conference Finals. To me, they are a big sleeper team. I think some people aren't really respecting them as much. They could win it all this upcoming season in my mind. Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic is a crazy big three. Jokic, of course, winning 2 MVPs. We saw what Jamal Murray did last time he was in the playoffs. Michael Porter Jr. does have to get healthy. That is a huge if, but if he is healthy, he is a microwave scorer that can knock down shots from pretty much anywhere at 6'10". Now they also play alongside Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who I love as a pickup for them from the Washington Wizards in that Will Barton trade. Aaron Gordon as well comes in. And he, when he got to Denver at the trade deadline a few seasons ago, when you had Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Jokic, and Aaron Gordon as a foursome in that starting lineup, they lost like one game. At that point, I was pretty convinced they were going to go ahead and win the 2021 NBA Finals, or at least the 2021 Western Conference. I was super confident in that team. Of course, Jamal Murray ends up tearing his ACL, other guys go down to injury, and they just don't end up making it out of the second round. Now, if they're able to stay healthy, alongside role players like Jeff Green, Bruce Brown, who I love him as a pickup for this team, a great defender, a guy who's going to give them a lot of great minutes and could be in some closing lineups, Bones Highland, Ish Smith, they drafted a solid win now player too in Christian Brown. They did a lot of great things this past offseason and over these last 2 years. Guys are healthy. I think this team is ready to make a run in the West, and I would not be surprised if they win it all. Then we have the Los Angeles Clippers, who are probably the deepest team in the league. Of course, they're led by Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, one of the best duos in the league when healthy, which is the big issue for this Clippers team is if they can stay healthy. But if they can, they've got a supporting cast of John Wall, Marcus Morris, Reggie Jackson, Zubac, Norman Powell, Luke Kennard, Robert Covington, Brandon Boston, and Amir Coffey. That's 11 players I just named for you. They don't need to even play all those guys. So that means guys like Brandon Boston or Amir Coffey or like Luke Kennard or Robert Covington, like some of those guys aren't going to get minutes, at least 1 or 2 of them. And that's pretty insane to think about how deep that roster is. You could run a starting lineup out there of John Wall, Norman Powell, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Zubac, having Marcus Morris come off the bench, Reggie Jackson come off the bench. That is an incredibly deep team. You put that next to, like I said, those 2 guys in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Tyronn Lue, who in my opinion is at worst the second best coach in the league. I'd argue he's probably my best coach in the league at this point. They were the 9 seed last year with half a season of Paul George and no Kawhi Leonard all year. So now they add in a full season of Paul George, hopefully, Kawhi Leonard as well. They got deeper. This is going to be an incredible team, and they might even be my early favorite to win that Western Conference. Then you've got a young up-and-coming team in the Minnesota Timberwolves. In fact, we have a few young up-and-coming teams. The Timberwolves have one of the best starting fives in the league with D'Lo, Anthony Edwards, Jade McDaniels, Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert. And the Gobert acquisition is the big thing. They were the 7 seed last year, and now they added one of the best rim protectors we've seen in this league in Rudy Gobert. I'm a big believer in this acquisition. I think it's really going to make them super competitive. They were the 13th best defensive team last season. And although the Minnesota Timberwolves lost guys like Jared Vanderbilt, Pat Bev, Gobert is going to only make them better as an all-time rim protector. Down low next to Cat, they might have some issues with perimeter defense, but I still think they'll be okay. I think they will make some moves before the trade deadline or even before the season starts. They've got guys like Austin Rivers, Kyle Anderson, Bryn Forbes, Jalen Noel, Taurean Prince, Naz Reid, guys like that who can come in off the bench and provide as well. I think this team could shock people. I would not be surprised if they make a run and are a top 5 team, top 4 team, hell, maybe even in the Western Conference by the time the playoffs roll around. Then you've got the New Orleans Pelicans, who shocked the Suns in the playoffs. They took them to 6 games without Zion Williamson, who, if in case you forgot who Zion is, he averaged 27 points per game just 1 year ago. 1 year ago. I know it feels like way longer, but 1 year ago, he averaged 27 points per game. And as long as he stays healthy, he could be a top 10 player this season. Like, no joke. There's some sports books that have him as their leader for most improved player. Do you know how insane it would be, first of all, if he won most improved, the numbers he'd have to put up? But it also just shows his potential. Zion could legit get pretty close to 30 points per game, I think. That's how dominant he is. And now they've given him a starting lineup of CJ, Herb, Ingram, him, and Valanciunas, who can all space the floor, allow him to drive and attack down low. They could very well be the Grizzlies of this season, in my opinion, where they're a team that is kind, they were kind of fun this past year. They were an 8 seed. Even actually, it's very mirrored now that I think about it, with the Grizzlies last year taking the Jazz, a game from them in the playoffs, really giving them a tough fight. Pelicans did the same to the Suns this past season, and now with Zion Williamson, I think the Pelicans have the chance to jump up huge in the standings. They are going to be a super scary team, once again, if Zion can stay healthy, and hopefully he does. And if he does, the West is going to have to look out for the Pelicans. I really think they could make a massive leap. And I haven't even talked about the Dallas Mavericks yet, who did lose Jalen Brunson, but they also added Christian Wood, who, in my opinion, is a great big for Luka. They still have Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, Tim Hardaway Jr., who's hopefully going to be healthy, JaVale McGee, Reggie Bullock, Maxi Kleber. It's a really solid roster. I do think they might need another move to make losing Jalen Brunson. It kind of hurts bad, but they just made a Western Conference Finals run. It's Luka Doncic. They're going to be one of the best teams in the West. That's just the way it's going to go. They do have solid depth. They've got one of the best offensive players in the league right now, and one of the best young offensive players we've seen in the history of the league. I wouldn't be surprised if Luka puts this team on his back, leads them to a 3 seed, and becomes the MVP. I could see that with Luka. Then you have the Portland Trailblazers, who were kind of off the radar last season with Damian Lillard's injury and a couple other factors as well, but now they've got a team of Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, Josh Hart, Jeremy Grant, Yusuf Nurkic as their starting 5, which I think is a really good starting 5. They've got some fun young players off the bench too, in Nas Little, Shaedon Sharpe, Trendon Watford, who just won Summer League Final MVP, and I saw him play in person. That guy can hoop, as well as Brandon Williams, Keon Johnson. They picked up Gary Payton II, who I think is a great pickup for them and was huge for the Warriors in that championship run. There's a lot of young players with potential on that roster, so if a few of those players improve, get more consistent, alongside what is a really talented starting 5, they might not win a championship, but they're going to be a pretty solid team. Then, of course, you have the Lakers, who are kind of in that middle ground where they've got LeBron and AD, who are incredible, but the Russ trade did not work out this past season. However, there are rumors that Kyrie Irving could end up a Laker before the year, or if they trade Russ for some solid role players, I think all in all that team could be really solid. They made some solid acquisitions in the offseason with Lonnie Walker and Thomas Bryant, guys like that, as well as some other young guys. There still has to be a lot of work done, but when you have LeBron and AD, I'm never going to count you out as a competitive team. Also, with potentially a Russ bounce back year as a Russ fan, fingers crossed on that one, but maybe they could also trade for some role players or trade them for Kyrie Irving. And if you end up with a big 3 of Kyrie, LeBron, AD, or LeBron, AD, and some role players, you're going to be a pretty solid team at the very worst. There's also the Sacramento Kings, who are a little bit more in the outskirts alongside the Lakers, but they do have a solid starting 5 of De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Keegan Murray, Harrison Barnes, and Domantas Sabonis. It's a fun lineup. Keegan Murray just won Summer League MVP, and he was incredible all throughout. From seeing him in person in the Summer League, he's going to be a guy. He's a great fit for that team, immediately comes in and provides shooting as well as defense. They've also got a pretty solid depth on that team with Davion Mitchell, Kevin Huerter, Chimezie Metu, Rashawn Holmes. I don't know if they'll be a playoff team. I still think they're kind of like borderline play-in, but they're going to be really solid. And the fact that a team like that is going to be borderline play-in, that kind of shows you how talented this Western Conference is. Then you've got teams like the Thunder and Rockets, who are young and I don't think are really going to compete for the playoffs, but they're going to keep getting better and they'll be a lot more competitive this season. And then you've got the Jazz and Spurs, who lost to their stars in Rudy Gobert and DeJounte Murray. The Jazz do still have Donovan Mitchell, but the rumor is he's on his way out as well. So those two teams probably won't be very good, but 13 out of 15 teams ain't bad in terms of teams that are going to be at least a bit competitive. So the Western Conference is stacked. We have, in my opinion, at least like 7 teams I could see making a pretty deep run to the Western Conference Finals, 9 or 10 teams that I think could make the playoffs, maybe even 11 if I really push it a little bit. It's going to be a bloodbath. I wouldn't be surprised if we see like 8 teams, 7 teams win 50 games, a team miss the playoffs through the play-in with like 46, 47 wins. It's going to be absolutely ridiculous. I cannot wait for this year's Western Conference, and I kind of just want to talk with you all about it because it's been on my mind a lot. So I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy. Let me know who you have winning the West in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what y'all have to say. For right now, I appreciate y'all watching, and I will see y'all later. Real one, say it back.